And so when we start looking at, time back into this Generation X, and we say he gets to 50 and then he figures it out, of course, by then he got some physical ailments, he got different other things, but his mind is telling him at this point, man, don't keep taking this, right? Don't keep putting up with this. Right. And so then he starts trying to muster the maturity. But then he has trained other men coming behind him to be just as they'd be worse as he was.
Yep, absolutely. So herein lies the problem, because once you hit 50 and you kind of figure out, all right, I'm not going to tolerate this type of behavior anymore, by default of continuously tolerating it until you reached your breaking point. You didn't arrive at 50 and say, I'm no longer tolerating this behavior, because throughout my experiences, I've had my battles with these type of behaviors, and I've decided that these are my values. No, you've arrived at 50 and said you are not tolerating these behaviors anymore, because you have tolerated them all the way up until you turn 50. And so you have now men 45, 50 years old talking about they don't want to deal with African-American women no more. They don't want to deal with this type of woman no more. But you have dealt with them all the way up until this point, which is part of the problem. You never put your foot down. You never led with standards that would kind of filter out the type of women that you would welcome into your life. Once you decide on what behaviors you're going to accept, what behaviors you're not going to accept, the world will naturally conform to the standards that you set. You never set the standards. You just got tired. It's like a guy who goes back and forth to prison here again and just says at 50 years old, I ain't got no more bid in me. He didn't come to that realization because he just doesn't like his freedom being taken away from him. He doesn't like his autonomy being taken away. He's totally fine with his freedom and his autonomy being taken away from him. It's just at 50, it's just, it hits a little different.
Right, he can't do that steel and concrete no more.
Right. He can't do it anymore. It's not like a guy who went to jail one time and said, you know what, I don't like this.
Right.
I don't like the way this feels. I don't like to be told what to do, when to do, how to do it. I don't like that.
Prison's no place for a man. How can I be a man in this type of environment?
Exactly. And so he learns. So one is learning because of experience. The other one is learning by default of not learning from experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see that happening with relationships as well. So you have some men who have now decided, I'm not dealing with these type of women anymore. I'm not marrying no more women with children. I'm not dealing with no African-American women. I'm not dealing with this type of woman, only because you have been dealing with these type of women your entire life. Mm-hmm. You never put your foot down. You never led with your standards. You never led with your values. You never drew, line in the sand and decided on what behaviors you were going to accept. Because if you had done that years ago, you wouldn't have arrived at this place of default that I ain't dealing with these type of women no more. And it goes on in the Muslim community a lot. I don't know how many brothers I've heard say, I'm not dealing with any more African-American sisters. I'm not dealing with no more sisters with children. I've only ever been married to African-American women, and I'm sorry, those are not my experiences.
Right.
I wouldn't want to be with anybody other than an African-American woman. Those are not my experiences. So I don't know what was going on in your life that you had some of these horrible experiences. And perhaps some of that was as a result of you.
Exactly. Now you went right where I was trying to get to, while you was talking. It then becomes a thing of, and this is actually a question, but I'm kind of saying it as a statement, but this is actually a question. You were thinking you was establishing yourself as a man. Well, I ain't gonna do this, I ain't gonna do that, because majority of these men, and I guess I am making a statement more importantly, majority of our men have been married more than 3 or 4 times by the age of 50. Right, so that means they got some divorces in the rear view. Mm-hmm. When they felt like they was actually trying to establish certain things based upon if they thought it was a spiritual thing that they had, a religious thing that they had, or You know, they had some upbringing. They're saying that this is the type of man I wanted to be. Where they didn't seem, I won't say inflexible, but they weren't empathetic enough to even understand the woman that they was dealing with. And so therefore they drop them off. And we see a lot of our, you know, the millennials and the Generation Z seeing how, because what I've run into and talking with some of them is that they don't want to have the relationship they seen their mothers and fathers have, you know, 3 or 4 marriages, all this old type of stuff here, which they still doing wrong, right? But they don't want to do that wrong. Right?
But they are.
They are.
That's a farce. It's a farce to say, well, I don't want to have the type of relationships that I saw my parents have, right? That's a farce because you haven't unlearned the behaviors that your parents taught you in order for you to have a different outcome.
And there you get my point. Now you have my point.
Is to unlearn the behaviors that are going to lead you to have the same outcome. And if you haven't taken time out to assess what they did wrong and what, you know, what those issues were, it's not just the physical. Oh, I'm not going to choose this type of man because those are the type of men my mother went for. Or I'm not going to choose these type of women because those are the type of women my father went for. It's less physical and more psychological. Because you got to go deeper. Why did my mother choose those type of men? Why did my father choose those type of men? It's more psychological than it is physical. And if you haven't taken the time out to unpack that and unlearn those behaviors and approach, you know, relationships from a different paradigm, from a different perspective, you're going to end up with the same results. No matter how much you try to avoid it, you still end up with the same results. So while we're sitting here saying, I don't want to have the same situation that my parents had, and then you end up with the same situation your parents had.
Really, I mean, really, they do.
I'm talking about Muslims who were born and raised in the religion.
Exactly.
Because those who are converts to Islam, they might have an excuse because they still haven't acclimated themselves to the religion. And many of us come from broken homes, broken families. So we have a lot to, you know, we have
unpack. There's a lot to unpack.
Those who were born and raised in the Muslim community, who came from dual parent households, you had a head start, albeit maybe it wasn't the most functional, you know, dual parent home, but you did have both parents there. You did have the religion of Islam, even though your parents may have forced the religion on you. Maybe your parents were always arguing. Maybe it was a little bit of dysfunction here and there. You still had a blueprint. You still had a head start in comparison to somebody who came from Jahiliyyah, who had to find Islam, who had to find themselves in Islam, who had to reevaluate and recalibrate as it relates to their approach to relationships because of the dysfunctional families that they came from. You know, like you had a head start and you still ended up with the same situation your parents ended up with.
And,
so
and even more so, probably even worse, because not only do you have that, but you're being disobedient to your Lord.
And then that's another thing. You have a lot of Muslims who were born and raised in the religion. They are just as far away from the Quran and the Sunnah as someone who is a non-Muslim. And I mean, I'm not blaming them for that. I'm saying that is a part of why they are experiencing the problems that they are experiencing because of your distance from the religion. You're there. The barakah, the blessing comes from being close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's where you get your blessing from. And while those of us who are converts to Islam, we convert to Islam and we gravitate towards the religion with such intensity, and we are mocked literally by Muslims who were born and raised in the religion. We are mocked by them, like, oh, he must be a convert. Oh, that's convert behavior. Yeah, it is. And look at the difference between your lifestyle and my lifestyle. Look at the difference, the difference between your lifestyle and my lifestyle. Your lifestyle parallels the lifestyle of a non-Muslim. The only difference between you and them is that you are under Shahada. You were born and raised Muslim.
It really has peer pressure. I don't want to feel like I'm deviating from my conversation, but I think this is important here. because this is something that actually speaks back to manhood in a sense to peer pressure. How much of that is a factor?
A factor in what?
The
The
way
way that men show up in their relationships?
so if they show up in life, relationships, and just in doing what it is that they do,
Plays a huge factor. You can never underestimate the outside influences. We have internal influences and we have external influences. Internal influences are, here again, your closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As I talked about on the khutbah this Friday, one of the consequences of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that He will assign to you a devil that will constantly influence you in a negative way and push you in. And someone can say, well, why would God do that? If God loves me, then why would He do that? He does that because that's the choice that you made for yourself.
right. That's your consequences for your
That's
actions.
the consequence of your action. When you stay close to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are
You're
surrounded.
under His protection. You're under His protection.
You're under His protection. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever wakes up for Salatul Fajr, he is tahta dhimmatillah. He is under the protection of God. And you think about Muslims who oversleep for Salatul Fajr, the alarm goes off, don't even set an alarm. You don't even have the intention to get up for Salatul Fajr. How can you be under the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Mm-hmm.
So you have internal influences and then you have external influences. The Prophet ﷺ said, let every man look at who he takes as a close friend, because a person is on the religion of his close companion. The person that he spends most of his time around is the person that's going to have the biggest influence on him.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that men show up in their relationships is, there's a very famous saying, show me your friends and I'll tell you your future.
Mm-hmm.
Show me your friends and I'll tell you your future. Why? Because if you show me your friends, the people that you spend most of your time around, I can almost guarantee that you're going to end up just like them because of the external influences.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're around brothers who, for example, I don't think that a married man should spend time with single
men. Mm-hmm.
If you are married, then that means that the vast majority of your friends or the people that you associate with and spend time with should be married.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the realm that you're operating in. That's just like you have a job and you hang around men that don't have jobs.
Right. They stand on street corners all day long.
You understand what I'm saying? And we've seen what happens to men who did that.
Right.
We've seen guys who work the 9 to 5, get off work, go to the liquor store, come hang out on the street corner with the guys that have been out there all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually he loses his job. Eventually he slacks off because he's trying to, here again, you play both sides of the fence. Eventually you get hit in the middle.
Right.
And so you can't operate as a married man surrounded by men who are single or think and act like single men.
Single men.
Some
right.
men that are married, but they still function like they're single.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These are individualists. Their approach to relationships is an individualistic approach, meaning I'm married or I'm in a relationship with this woman, but I'm still doing me.
I'm doing me. Right. They still have a lot of selfish tendencies.
Right. You're not doing the relationship. You're doing you in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't function like that. You either in 10 toes down or you're out.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot play both sides of the fence. So the external influences are real. The people that you spend your time around will have the most influence on you. And so as a married man, and this is why we try to have marriage retreats,
Mm-hmm.
we try to have, events for married people so that you can rub shoulders with other couples. Mm-hmm. You get to realize that the problems that you're experiencing in your marriage are not exclusive to you. That other people have these same problems. Mm-hmm. And it kind of normalizes the issues that you trivialize in your marriage.
You don't prioritize it as deeply as you would take it such being
right.
Such personal. You don't take it as personal as people going through this. You still have to put the work in.
Right.
That don't mean you trivialize it either, but
right.
you don't personalize it as much, because there's work that can be done. I just say the relationship continues to need work.
Right.
So we all are work in progress.
Absolutely. But if you want to continue being a work in progress, you have to be around people who are
putting in work.
People who are striving to make progress.
Right. They putting in this work. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't have any single friends. And anybody that I know that is single, I'm trying to get you married.
Right.
You know, I don't give you a chance to be single around me.
Right.
If there's a brother that I see that he's single, my first question to you, sound like a brother, you married?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not married. Why are you not married? Are you looking to get married? I know a sister right now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm making those connections for you because I know what being married does for a man. It matures you. It matures you. Sister Nisa Muhammad, if you remember, when her and her husband used to attend the marriage retreats. She said something. She said that a single man, his lifespan, his life expectancy is similar to that of a man who smokes 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Just by being single, you reduce your life expectancy similar to a man who smokes 2 packs of cigarettes a day, just by being single, by default of being single. Because you're carrying the weight.
I don't know. I mean, he just froze. I didn't do nothing.
On part. Am I making?
He just froze.
Can you guys hear?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So by having a spouse, you are cutting some of your problems in half, because a lot of the problems that you are going to come up against as a man, a lot of those problems can be dealt with or can be dissolved simply by being married.
Right. And
which is why the Prophet ﷺ said that whomever Allah blesses with a righteous wife, قَدْ اسْتَكْمَلَ نِصْفَ دِينِهِ, then he has completed half of his religion. When a man gets married, he has completed half of his deen. فَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ فِي نِصْفِ الْآخَرِ, and let him fear Allah with regards to the other half of his religion. Why do you complete your religion when you get married?
Okay, I just heard you say something, so I'm gonna back you up a second, because you may have put something in there that might be you, or I'm going to ask this is because I haven't heard it this way before. So when a man finds a righteous wife, he completes half his deen. Did I just hear you say that?
Yes.
Okay, is that the text itself?
That's the text. That's the
wow. You know, because you always hear marriage is half your deen, right?
Right.
But there's never contextualized saying a man who gets a righteous wife completes,
because you wasn't taught the hadith from a student that graduated from the hadith. I mean, in a nutshell.
Whoa, man. Alhamdulillah. Well, you know what? Alhamdulillah, because
you're taking your deen from the mouths of other Muslims. You know, you might end up with half of a hadith. You know what I mean? A sentence
dropped into another half,
translated, transliteration, like you can end up with anything. But when you sit with a person who has studied the deen and sat at the feet of scholars, you're gonna get it from the source.
Wow, because Shadi, I'm telling you, 40 years as a Muslim. 40 years as a Muslim. I'm not playing.
You never heard the full text of the
never. And if I had it, I missed it. But I was maybe my ears are open to it now more so, and I'm able to hear certain things probably I was able to hear earlier in my Islamic life, right? But I've often heard that regurgitated. Marriage is half your deen, fear Allah on the other half, right? But when you said it that way, I was like, wow, it just, I'm talking about, man, it's like it opened a whole floodgate worth of light.
How does that addition to the hadith help you to contextualize the concept even more?
As a man, it makes me understand the reality of really trying to making sure that I have a righteous wife.
Right, because an unrighteous wife would actually set you back. So it wouldn't be so. Being married to a woman that is not righteous is no different than being single.
Well,
So
right,
marrying
and
a woman who is not righteous is not going to fulfill half of your deen, because you're still working twice as hard, because she's a liability, not an asset.
and the thought though is
The
marriage is half
righteous
your
wife
deen.
is an asset.
Right, but when you say marriage is half the deen, then you think just marrying is the asset.
Right.
But you see, and so you're gonna get the first thing coming. Oh, you want to be married? Yeah,
Marriage is half your deen.
marriage half your deen.
No, marriage to a righteous person is half of your deen.
Right,
Because the righteous person is an asset.
right. Yeah.
Which means that half of what you would have to deal with as a single man, you've already covered that by marrying a righteous
wife. Mm-hmm.
You already got that covered.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he said, fear Allah concerning the other half. Meaning, once I get married to a righteous woman, half of the things that I would have to deal with on my own, I've already squared those things away. I just need to fear Allah concerning the other half. And that is, the things that I'm confronted with on a day-to-day basis, trials of life, tribulations of life. Those are things that I can manage those things with taqwa, with the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there are other things in my life that I will be confronted with that I cannot handle except with a righteous woman by my side.
Wow, man. I'm telling you, bro. And then, you made a reference to the video, the video earlier, right? When the toxicity, and let me tell them I'm not poisonous,
right.
But I heard a lot of how people had, the comments that they had just on how my wife handled the situation.
Oh man, she handled it like a G, man.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Matter of fact, somebody sent me the clip, and the caption was, "This is the way that a wife holds her husband down."
Right.
And here again, you guys at the time that incident happened had no idea that clip.
This was going be this way, right?
You understand? And this is the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to take something that seems so insignificant in our eyes, and make it significant in the eyes of others.
Right.
Allah knows best where to place his message.
No. And we want to make sure that it's understood when people saying, I'm hearing you say a righteous wife or a righteous man. We're not talking about perfect.
No. Righteous does not mean perfect. It means a person who is aspiring for excellence.
For excellence.
We are aspiring. That's what a righteous spouse is. A righteous spouse is in a constant state of evolution to arrive at a place of excellence, not perfection. Perfection and excellence are two totally
different things.
Perfection is the apex. Excellence is a constant evolution.
It's the movement towards it. Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, and as we wrap up for this, Shadi, I got to get you back. So don't even be fronting on me. I got to have you back.
I'm a phone call away, Sheikh.
But as we wrap up this thing, I want men to realize that their role in, Generation X, as we have Generation X tried to course correct, there's nothing wrong with the course correct at this point, right? And as we're looking at the Millennials and Generation Z, as we continue to try to make that movement towards each other and working with each other, not looking at them like something wrong with them because they ain't get it, and just looking at us like, something wrong with y'all because y'all old. You know what I mean? I need you just like you need me. Right.
And I want to, if you don't mind, I want to make a disclaimer here. Oftentimes I get pegged as someone who is insensitive, especially when it comes to men. I've gotten into many conversations with brothers who feel like I always champion, the affairs of the sisters, and I always come down like a sledgehammer on the brothers. And while that there might be some truth to that, I mean,
Right.
women
To a degree. Men check men.
Women are
Check
not
men.
like men. Allah
Exactly.
subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنثَى, the male is not like the female. So that means that the women are not going to be handled the way that the men are going to be handled.
Right.
So that's number one. Number two, men, we have a greater responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for us to, aspire to that position of responsibility, that can't be handled with gentleness.
Right.
That has to be handled with, the realization that we are the khulafa. We are the vicegerents of the earth. We are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in positions of leadership. And it's just like a coach that comes down hard on a particular player that he knows has the potential to be, and you're putting your foot down on this kid because you know that given the right admonition, given the right encouragement, this kid can aspire to greatness.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my approach with the men in the Muslim community. It's not that I'm insensitive. I have taken time out to address and unpack a lot of our issues, things that even I've gone through in my life.
Right.
I don't use that as a crutch to be irresponsible.
Right.
I grew up in a foster home. I didn't grow up with my father. My mother was a drug user. I mean, like, to the end of it, I am a classic case of any kid that came from the ghetto.
Right.
But you would never know that if you were looking at me in my full scope of manhood, because I don't use that as a crutch.
Right.
That's not an excuse to do less than what I know I'm capable of.
Right. That's what just happened. That's not who you are.
Right.
Right.
That's the circumstance I was born into. Doesn't have to become who I am.
Right. Right. And I appreciate, you actually even saying that, and I hope that people out there listen to this, and brothers who are listening to this, because, I've even found myself having defended you. And I don't feel like I don't feel like it's a defense, as it is as a correction. For me, it's a correcting of somebody. It's not the sense of brothers coming down hard on men, but sometimes, real talk, you ninjas need that. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Because sometimes it don't get in until you crack it. Until you crack it. You know what I mean? Nothing gets in until you have to break the soil. Sometimes you got to break the soil with the words that's being used. And if you
feel like I'm coming down heavy, then you can always get your mercy and compassion from somebody else. It doesn't have to come from me.
From you. Exactly.
Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu was the unsheathed sword. You know what I mean? Like, you wasn't going to go to Umar and get soft compassion. You're going to get that from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're going to get that from Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, but you're not going to get that from Umar.
Right.
That's the balance.
Right. And there's people out there, there's somebody for everybody. Even I say this, I'm not the all be all. There's people you can come to me for services. There's other people you can go to for services. Just go get the service.
Just go get the service.
Just go get the service. I'm my riz is from my provisions is gonna come from my Lord. I'm not worried about the dollar.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he's gonna send me who he's gonna send to me. He's gonna give me what he's gonna give me. But if you need this service and you can't get it from here, if you don't listen to my podcast, listen to somebody else's podcast. Just go listen and get it.
Right. Just go get it.
Just go get it. I want to put people in front of you, and I put a range of people in front of people, so hopefully you can get it. You know what I mean? But I just want you to get it, because if you don't get it, the consequences are dire.
And the older you get, more children you have, the less of a luxury you have to make mistakes.
Exactly.
You don't have that luxury.
Exactly.
When you have people who are waiting for you to come home at night, you don't have the luxury to be out and about just doing whatever feels good doing.
Exactly. Just doing you. You can't be in a position of just doing you. You have to think beyond you. You have to think about everything that's in your house and everything that extends from your house.
And that goes beyond just you. even financially, there's times when I want to buy something for myself, but I know that this one needs some sneakers. I got to take this one school shopping. I got to get this for this one, and it's like, all right, I'll get that.
I get that another time.
Later.
I get that later.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because here again, you don't have the luxury to make that type of mistake.
Right. And it goes back to the I guess the narration that I said in English, that a shepherd, he's a person's a shepherd of his sheep. And I know you know it, so once you say
man is a shepherd over his family.
And man is a shepherd over his family. It's some things that I don't want to do sometimes, but I gotta do it.
Right. And you got to think about the implications of what that means. The Prophet ﷺ used words that were of a cultural context that they understood from their culture. We use a lot of context related to, he used a lot of phrases and metaphors that were related to being a shepherd, and caring for animals and things like that, because that was the cultural context.
That was that cultural context.
But when you unpack that from where we are standing, from our paradigm, he said, "Kullukum ra'in," all of you are shepherds. "Wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyatihi," and all of you are responsible for your flock. When you think about a shepherd and what's his responsibility to his flock, you got to take them out to the pasture. You got to let them graze. You got to let them eat. You got to let them, use the bathroom, and then you got to get them back to to the barn, get them back to those parameters where they are protected, for the night, where you can watch over them and guard over them.
And you can't leave a one.
Ooh, preach. Preach.
You can't leave a one. And this is the thing. My God, man. Oh, God.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I mean,
you can't leave a one.
Think about that.
That's you're a man. You can't leave a one.
You got kids out here in the world, even those that are no longer in your house, that are adults, you still got to watch over them.
You got to watch them. You got to watch it.
Even though you don't talk to them every day, a text every now and again, like, hey, you good? You all right? You still follow up with them. You still check up on them, because you're still the ra'i, you're still the shepherd. And that's your flock. You don't have the luxury of letting one of them slip away. That's what it means. That whole hadith means that the man is responsible. And that type of responsibility, I don't see a lot of men living up to that level of responsibility today. We use Bani Israel looking for the loophole for everything, instead of looking for ways in which we can be more responsible. We're looking for ways in which to be less responsible. So when a brother says, oh, I don't have to tell my wife if I go take a second wife, that's irresponsible. That's irresponsible. Because just as before you pronounce divorce on your wife, you have to make sure that she's not on her menstrual cycle. You got to take into consideration her psychological well-being. You got to take into consideration her physical well-being before you can pronounce divorce on her. How much more would that be if you're going out to take another wife? There's never a good time to take another wife, but there's always a bad time.
A bad time to do it.
A horrible time to take another wife.
Exactly.
And so, it's just, we're always looking for ways to be more irresponsible instead of looking for ways to be more responsible. What can I do to be more responsible, to be more of the shepherd that the Prophet ﷺ described the man as in that hadith?
No, I ain't gonna tell you no lie. I wish I started. I'm finna end this, man. I wish I would have started out with this one. that conversation right there. I'm praying that everyone listen to this to the very end. Because social media, they get on for about 5-10 minutes. I don't know. I might just have to make a reel out of this one, that last statement, so they can get back to it. So, because they live their life. That's the other thing, because their attention span is so short. They live their life on reels. You know what I mean? So, but that in itself is the epitome of what we're looking like. That does not look like manhood, responsibility. As being responsible. and then learning how to be responsible. You think you know it. You ask the people who know, get some information. You think you know it, and we move. I'm preaching now. We move as if we know every daggone thing when we don't. And it's okay not to know. It's okay to go ask for some information.
The cure for ignorance is a question.
It's a question. I call you, like you say, a phone call away, man. Y'all don't even know how much I call him. You know what I mean?
And I call you. I just said that on my live the other day. I was like, man, there's times when I'm having marital problems and I call you. And like, nobody is above being corrected. Nobody is above constructive criticism. Nobody is above that. And it's just like, as men, we just cannot humble ourselves to put ourselves in the position to be on the receiving end of admonition. And the moment you say something to me that I don't like, off I go, and go make more irresponsible
decisions. Exactly.
Right.
More make it,
simply because somebody said something to you in a way that you didn't. There's a show that I enjoy watching. I enjoy watching it for a number of reasons. One is that it's very informative about the law. Number two, there's no remnants of the LGBT, presence of LGBT, and there are no sex scenes. Okay. And that is this show called Suits. It's been out for
Suits. Yes.
Oh my gosh, man.
Yes. Suits.
And one of the things that I love about that show is they will say something wrong. The whole show is people coming in and apologizing. Exactly. Hey, I'm sorry I said that to you. I was this, I was that. This one walks into the office. Hey, you got a minute? I'm sorry that I said that. And I'm just like, man, that is the way that adults function.
Exactly.
I wrong you, I apologize, and we keep it moving. Business
we work that out. With business still going, we work it out, and we're gonna make it better.
Right. Nowhere in that show do you see those lawyers within that firm fall out with each other and just completely separate from each other and decimate their business because of ego. Even though there's some huge egos.
It's some huge egos in that law office. It's some huge
but those egos are always behind the bigger picture. We do the total opposite. Our ego is something that they said about why Nipsey Hussle was murdered. They said that they had a phrase. They said, there is no man that is bigger than the set.
Right.
And they're saying that Nipsey Hussle became bigger than the set. But what I'm saying is that in African-American culture, our egos are bigger than the set. We don't function with that concept of no ego bigger than the set, meaning there is no ego from amongst us that is bigger than the bigger picture. Every single one of us, our egos at some point can be bigger than the picture. And this is why it's so easy for us to say, man, I don't deal with him. I don't deal with him. I don't like him because this man said something to you that made you uncomfortable. Go have a conversation with the man. I extend an open invite to anybody. If I've ever said something to you, whether directly or indirectly, that made you uncomfortable with something I said, come to me. But don't write me off simply because I said something that tapped into your ego, that challenged your ego, or that made you uncomfortable. I'm supposed to make you uncomfortable. Steel sharpens steel.
Exactly.
Iron,
iron, man.
I'm not making you uncomfortable, then I'm not doing my job.
Right.
I'm not doing my job. The moment I'm not making you uncomfortable, then there is no need for me to be around. I'm around because I make you uncomfortable. And in making you uncomfortable, I'm making you better.
Right. That's the hopes anyway. That would be the hopes anyway. That's the hope anyway.
That's the hope.
And so with that, man, of course, Shadi, I do appreciate you, man. You've been a brother to me since we've been knowing each other. Even when you had to slap me around a little bit, you know what I mean? So it's been, it's definitely been a good experience. I've learned how to excel as a man with our relationship. Alhamdulillah, I definitely appreciate for that. I've said on this podcast, it's two men. I answer that question myself. As many men that I've encountered, in my life. One is deceased now, who I took as a mentor. Is by the name of Edward Menifee. He's a good dude. He showed me some light when I was in a dark place. Another one is Sheikh Zaid Ansari. You know what I mean? And that's my man. And you, of course, know him. And the third is you. You know what I mean? And there's actually 3 levels of ages in that as well. You know what I mean? And of course, you getting younger than I am, but from your knowledge and even how you try to practice your wisdom has been beneficial to me. Right. And so I say to you, just like anybody, we ain't breaking no backs and weighing no shoulders down, but you have to speak, you have to give flowers when flowers are due. You know what I mean? And ain't no need of me sitting there and not giving. I want to give this speech when you gone, and yeah, man, Shadi was a good brother. Rahimullah. No, I'm gonna say that now and then, just like anywhere else. And I really appreciate you coming on, my podcast and giving your expertise and your knowledge and having this conversation on manhood. So, for those who don't know, who are new to you, who may see this, let them know how they can find you.
Shadid Muhammad on any platform. I don't go by any other name. Shadid Muhammad on any platform. That's on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Imam Shadid Muhammad. That's where you can find me.
So you have something going on with Rhoda right now.
Rhoda Islamic Center of Delaware. Alhamdulillah, we are working towards building our facility from the ground up. Alhamdulillah, we're looking to possibly start construction on the building within the next few weeks. If anyone would like to donate, then they can always go to our Cash App, which is the Cash App sign, Rhoda IC, RAWDAHIC, or they could use Zelle, which is the message's phone number, 302-766-5389. Or they can go directly to our website, www.rodaislamiccenterofdelaware.com. And there's a tab on there for donations, or, if a person wants to be, a monthly supporter, weekly supporter. There are tons of ways to get involved. Alhamdulillah, you can go directly to the website and get involved and cash in on this opportunity.
And last but not least, I know in December you have a event that's taking place.
Yeah, we have our annual winter conference here in Newark, Delaware. Alhamdulillah, that will be from December 20th to December 22nd. Alhamdulillah, this winter conference, we will be focusing on maintaining our morals amid chaos and confusion. And so basically the conference will be centered around Islamic morals, values that we see, social media and Muslims that are, more inclined towards what is happening in the world rather than what is happening in, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to adhere to. We see those morals, and values being chipped away at, little by little by little. And we want to make sure that we maintain, this presence of Islam, not just in the physical form, but also in the form of values, morals, manners. And inshallah ta'ala, the conference will be centered around that particular theme. We have a long list of speakers and imams and shuyukh. We have Imam Ali Davis, Imam Abu Sajid, Akil Ingram, Dr. Tahir Wyatt, Abu Dhahira, Sheikh Abdulaziz from Masjid Ashab al-Yamin in East Orange, New Jersey, Sheikh Abu Osama al-Dhahabi, who's back with us in Florida, alhamdulillah. We have a ton of speakers. We have Sister Latifa Ali. We have also Sister Islah Abdurrahim, who will be, giving presentations for the sisters. So we have, a great lineup of speakers, inshallah ta'ala, that are presenters, scholars, imams, and teachers that are going to all center their talks around this concept of maintaining our morals amid the chaos and confusion.
All right. So y'all find out y'all can get him on anywhere. Now he got some good stuff out there on social media now. So if you haven't checked him out, by all means, please do so. And of course, this is another great episode of the Get Made podcast. I definitely appreciate you, Shadid, for being here and lending your expertise to our conversation. You guys, y'all know where to reach me. Y'all know where you can find me. The Get Made podcast on what's that, on YouTube, Instagram is that official Hassan Clay, on Facebook Hassan Clay, on TikTok the Hassan Clay Experience. By all means, please check us out. Continue to support me. You guys been doing all right. I've been giving me some love. I've been appreciate that. So continue to keep it up, and I'm gonna try to continue to do my best to continue to bring good content for manhood and the development of manhood. Y'all take care, and we're going to see you next week. 7 p.m., y'all. 7 p.m.